The betrayal, the morning sun streamed through the cathedral windows, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floor where Celeste Rivera stood in her ivory silk gown. Her hands trembled as she clutched her bouquet of white roses, the delicate petals already beginning to wilt in the humid June air. Behind her, the whispers of 300 guests created a symphony of anticipation and barely concealed gossip. "He'll be here," she whispered to herself, adjusting the vintage lace veil that had belonged to her grandmother. "Marcus wouldn't do this to me. Not today." But as the grandfather clock in the corner chimed 11:30, 30 minutes past the scheduled ceremony time, Celeste's heart began to sink like a stone in her chest. The priest, Father Rodriguez, approached her with gentle eyes, filled with sympathy she didn't want to acknowledge. "Miss Rivera, perhaps we should know." Her voice was stronger than she felt. "He's coming. Traffic must be bad. Or maybe his phone died. He's coming." The massive oak doors at the back of the cathedral creaked open, and Celeste's breath caught in her throat. But instead of Marcus in his tailored black tuxedo, his best man Tommy rushed down the aisle, his face flushed and his bow tie askew. "Celeste," Tommy panted, his voice carrying across the now silent cathedral. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. He left this morning. Said he couldn't go through with it." The bouquet slipped from Celeste's numb fingers, white roses scattering across the polished floor like fallen snow. "What do you mean he left?" Tommy's eyes darted around the watching crowd before settling back on her face. "Why, he found the pregnancy test in your purse yesterday. He said he wasn't ready to be a father. He said he was too young to be tied down." The voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm sorry, Celeste, he's gone." The cathedral erupted in gasps and murmurs. Celeste felt the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her, their pity and shock pressing down like a physical force. Her hand instinctively moved to her still flat stomach, where the tiny life she'd only discovered a week ago was growing, the life she'd been so excited to share with Marcus after the honeymoon. "I need to leave," she managed, her voice barely audible above the growing chatter. As she turned to flee, her heel caught in the elaborate train of her gown. She stumbled, bracing herself for the humiliating fall, but strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. When she looked up, she found herself staring into the most intense pair of dark brown eyes she'd ever seen. The man who'd caught her was tall and broad-shouldered, with jet-black hair and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. His expensive charcoal suit fit him perfectly. And there was something about the way he carried himself that spoke of power and confidence. But it was his eyes that held her. They were filled with an understanding that seemed to see straight through to her soul. "Are you hurt?" His voice was deep and warm, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. "I'm fine," she lied, though they both knew she was anything but fine. "Thank you for catching me." He helped her steady herself, his hands lingering on her arms for just a moment longer than necessary. "I'm Damian Cross. I work with your fiancés, with Marcus's law firm." She managed a weak smile. "Though I suppose I won't be changing that name after all." Around them, the guests were beginning to file out, their voices creating a buzz of speculation and sympathy. Celeste watched her carefully planned wedding dissolve into chaos, her dreams crumbling like autumn leaves. "Miss Rivera," Damian said quietly, his voice cutting through her spiral of despair. "I know this might seem inappropriate given the circumstances, but I need to ask you something." She looked at him, confused. "What are you planning to raise?" "That baby alone." The question hit her like a physical blow. How could he know about the pregnancy? Had Tommy's words carried further than she'd realized? Yes, I suppose I am." Damian studied her face for a long moment, as if weighing some internal decision. When he spoke again, his words were so unexpected that she wondered if she'd misheard him. "Then let me ask you this, Celeste Rivera. Will you marry me instead?" Remaining guests who overheard his proposal stopped dead in their tracks. Celeste stared at him, certain she was hallucinating from the stress. "I'm sorry. What did you just say?" "I said, will you marry me?" Damian repeated, his voice calm and steady despite the chaos around them. "I know it sounds insane, but I have my reasons, good reasons, and I think I might be the answer to both of our problems." Celeste's world tilted on its axis. In the span of one morning, she'd gone from bride to abandoned woman to the recipient of a proposal from a complete stranger. She looked into Damien's dark eyes and saw something there, not pity, but possibility. "Are you out of your mind?" she whispered. "Probably," he admitted, the corner of his mouth quirking up in what might have been a smile. "But I'm also completely serious. Give me 5 minutes to explain, and I promise you'll understand." As the last of the wedding guests filed out, leaving them alone in the cathedral with the scattered roses and broken dreams, Celeste found herself nodding. 5 minutes, she agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. "But this better be the most convincing explanation I've ever heard." The small cafe 3 blocks from the cathedral felt like a sanctuary compared to the chaos they'd left behind. Celeste wrapped her hands around the warm mug of chamomile tea, grateful for something to anchor her to reality. Across from her, Damien Cross sat with his black coffee untouched, his dark eyes studying her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "You have exactly 4 minutes left," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "And I'm starting to think you're completely insane." Damien leaned back in his chair, and for the first time since she'd met him, she caught a glimpse of vulnerability beneath his composed exterior. "My grandfather, Edmund Cross, built Cross Industries from nothing. Steel, shipping, real estate buy. The time he died last year, it was worth $3 billion. Celeste nearly choked on her tea. $3 billion. He left it all to me. But there was one condition. Damien's jaw tightened. "I have to be married within 18 months of his death, or the entire inheritance goes to my cousin Jonathan, who's been circling like a vulture since the funeral." "That's archaic," Celeste breathed. "My grandfather was old-fashioned. He believed marriage made a man responsible, grounded." Damien's laugh was bitter. He didn't know about Rebecca. Something in his tone made Celeste lean forward. "Who's Rebecca?" "My fiancée. She was until 6 months ago." His fingers traced the rim of his coffee cup. "She died in a car accident 3 days before our wedding." Drunk driver ran a red light. The pain in his voice was raw, immediate. Celeste felt her heart constrict. "Damien, I'm so sorry. I thought I'd have time to grieve, to heal. But Jonathan's been pressuring the board, making moves to position himself as my successor. The deadline is in 30 days, Celeste. I'm not married by then. I lose everything my grandfather built. Why not just find someone else?" "Someone? You actually know?" Damien's dark eyes met hers. "'Cause every woman I've met since Rebecca died has looked at me like I'm a prize to be won. They see the money, the power, the life they could have. They don't see me, and you think I do? I think you're the first person in months who's looked at me without calculating what I'm worth." He paused. "Plus you need what I can offer." Celeste's hand instinctively moved to her belly, which is security, medical care, a home for you and your baby. His voice gentled. "I heard what that bastard said through his friend. He abandoned you because of the pregnancy. I'm offering you the exact opposite, a marriage of convenience." The words felt strange on her tongue. "A partnership. You get financial security, the best prenatal care money can buy, and a father figure for your child. I get to keep my grandfather's legacy and honor his memory." Celeste stared at him, her mind reeling. "You'd raise another man's child?" "Blood doesn't make a family," Damien said quietly. "Love does. And I already care more about your baby's welfare than its biological father ever did." The sincerity in his voice made her breath catch. "This is crazy, Damien. We barely know each other. Tell me about yourself, then." He leaned forward, genuine interest in his eyes. "What do you do?" "I'm a photographer. Weddings, mostly." She laughed shakily, ironic, considering. "What drew you to photography?" "I love capturing moments. When people are truly happy, they're so in love they forget the world exists." Her voice grew wistful. "I wanted to create something beautiful, something that would last. And now? Now I need to figure out how to support a baby on my own. Wedding photography doesn't exactly come with maternity leave. Damien nodded thoughtfully. I could set you up with your own studio. You could work as much or as little as you want. Build your own schedule around the baby. You'd do that? I believe in investing in people's dreams, Celeste. It's good business and good sense. She studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or ulterior motive. Instead, she found something that surprised her hope. Not the desperate hope of a man trying to manipulate her, but the quiet hope of someone who'd been in darkness for too long. What would you expect from me? She asked quietly. Honestly, companionship. One to share dinner with, to attend business functions with, someone who won't try to change me or fix me. He paused, and maybe eventually, friendship. And the baby? I'd like to be involved if you'll let me. I've always wanted children. His voice grew soft. Rebecca and I were trying when she died. I'd like to think I could be a good father. Celeste felt tears prick her eyes. The tenderness in his voice, when he spoke about children, about Rebecca, told her more about his character than any words could. This is insane, she whispered. Completely, he agreed. But sometimes the best decisions are the ones that don't make sense on paper. What about love? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Damien was quiet for a long moment. I loved Rebecca with everything I had. When she died, I thought that part of me died too. I'm not sure I'm capable of that kind of love again. And you think I am, after what happened today? I think you're brave enough to keep believing in love, even after it's broken your heart. I think you're strong enough to raise a child alone, but wise enough to accept help when it's offered. He reached across the table and gently covered her hand with his. I think you're exactly what I need, even if I can't give you the fairy tale. Romance you deserve. His hand was warm, calloused from some kind of work she wouldn't have expected from a billionaire. There was something solid about his touch, something that made her feel grounded for the first time all day. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course, but Celeste. He squeezed her hand gently. Whatever you decide, you're not alone. Anymore, even if you say no, I'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of. You have my word. She looked into his eyes and saw the truth there. This man, this stranger who'd caught her when she was falling, was offering her a lifeline. Just financial security, but something more: precious dignity. The chance to hold her head high, to give her child a name and a future. If I said yes, she said slowly, what would happen next? We'd get married as soon as possible. Small ceremony, just legal requirements. You'd move into my house, and we'd figure out the rest as we go. And if it doesn't work out, then we get divorced amicably, and you keep everything I've given you. Full custody of the baby, the photography studio, enough money to live comfortably for the rest of your art life. Celeste stared at him in amazement. You'd put that in writing? I'd insist on it. I want you to feel secure, not trapped. She closed her eyes, Marcus's cruel words echoing in her mind. He'd abandoned her at the first sign of responsibility, leaving her to face pregnancy and single motherhood alone. But here was a man offering her the exact opposite partnership: support, respect. When she opened her eyes, Damien was still watching her with that patient intensity, waiting for her decision without pressure or manipulation. Ask me again, she said softly. His eyes lit up with understanding. Celeste Rivera, will you marry me? This time, her answer came without hesitation. Yes. The smile that spread across Damien's face transformed him completely, erasing the pain and replacing it with something that looked remarkably like joy. Thank you, he said simply, as they shook hands across the small cafe table, ceiling. There. Unusual bargain. Celeste felt a flutter of something she couldn't quite name. Not love, not yet, but possibility. The chance for something beautiful to grow from the ashes of her broken dreams. When do we do this? She asked. How about tomorrow? Damien's grin was boyish, entirely at odds with his sophisticated exterior. I believe in seizing the moment. Celeste laughed, the sound surprising them both. Tomorrow it is, then. But I'm keeping my dress. Wouldn't dream of asking you to change it, Damien said, and something in his tone made her think he meant more than just the wedding gown. As they walked out of the cafe together, Celeste caught their reflection in the window, a woman in a wrinkled wedding dress and a man in an expensive suit. Two broken people taking a leap of faith together. It wasn't the fairy tale she'd dreamed of, but maybe it was something better. Maybe it was real. The Cross Mansion stood like something out of a fairy tale, its limestone facade gleaming in the afternoon sun. Celeste pressed her face to the window of the black sedan as they wound up the circular driveway, past manicured gardens and a fountain that sparkled like diamonds. 3 days had passed since their courthouse wedding, a simple ceremony with 2 witnesses Damien had hired, followed by the most surreal lunch of her life. Having second thoughts, Damien asked from beside her, his voice gentle but perceptive. Just processing, she admitted. Watching as they approached the grand entrance with its towering columns and carved oak doors, I keep thinking I'm going to wake up. Or the driver, a kind-faced man named Robert, whom Damien had introduced as part of the family, opened her door with a warm smile. Welcome home, Mrs. Cross. Mrs. Cross. The name still felt foreign on her tongue, like wearing someone else's clothes. Celeste stepped out carefully, her hand instinctively moving to her belly where the baby seemed to flutter with nervous energy. Grace has been beside herself with excitement, Damien said, offering her his arm as they climbed the marble steps. She's been running this place since I was 12. Fair warning, she's going to mother you within an inch of your life. Before Celeste could ask who Grace was, the front door swung open to reveal a petite woman with silver hair and the brightest blue eyes Celeste had ever seen. She wore a simple gray dress and an apron dusted with flour, and her entire face lit up when she saw them. There she is, Grace exclaimed, immediately pulling Celeste into a warm hug that smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. Oh, my dear, you're even more beautiful than Damien described. And look at that glow. That baby is going to be absolutely gorgeous. Celeste found herself laughing, the first genuine laugh she'd had since the cathedral. Thank you, Grace. Damien's told me so much about you. All lies, I'm sure, Grace said with a wink at Damien. Now come, let me show you around your new home. I've been cooking all morning. Growing babies need proper nutrition. As they walked through the foyer, Celeste tried not to gawk at the soaring ceilings, the crystal chandelier that cast rainbows across the walls, the oil paintings that looked like they belonged in a museum. Everything was elegant, but not cold, expensive, but somehow welcoming. Your room is on the 2nd floor, Damien said as they climbed the curved staircase. I thought you might want privacy while you adjust to everything. Our arrangement doesn't include sharing a bedroom, Celeste said quietly, grateful for his consideration.
Not unless you wanted to,
he replied, and something in his tone made her cheeks warm.
Art.
The bedroom Grace showed her was larger than her entire apartment had been. French doors opened onto a balcony overlooking the gardens, and a sitting area by the fireplace was perfect for reading. The bed was enormous, draped in soft blues and creams that reminded her of seafoam. I took the liberty of stocking the closet with a few essentials, Grace said, opening doors to reveal an array of maternity clothes in her exact size. Nothing too fancy, just comfortable things for every day. Grace, this is too much, Celeste protested. Nonsense. A woman needs to feel beautiful, especially when she's carrying new life. Grace's eyes twinkled. Besides, Damien's credit card barely noticed. She's right, Damien said from the doorway. I want you to be comfortable here, Celeste. This is your home now. That evening, they sat down to dinner in what Grace called the small dining room, a cozy space that only seated 12. With a table that could have been carved from a single tree, Grace had outdone herself with roasted chicken, herb potatoes, and vegetables from the estate's own garden. So what's the story? Celeste asked, cutting into her chicken. How does a billionaire end up with a family like this? Damien's fork paused halfway to his mouth. What do you mean? I mean, Grace clearly loves you like a son. Robert treats you like a brother, and you all seem genuinely happy together. That's not exactly the cold corporate image I expected. My parents died when I was 10, Damien said quietly. Car accident. My grandfather took me in, but he was already in his 70s and didn't really know what to do with a grieving child. Grace was his housekeeper then, and she basically raised me." "I did no such thing," Grace said, appearing with a slice of apple pie that smelled like heaven. "This boy raised himself. I just made sure he ate his vegetables and remembered too. Say please and thank you." "She taught me everything that mattered," Damien said, giving Grace an affectionate look. "How to cook, how to treat people with respect, how to find joy in simple things. My grandfather taught me business, but Grace taught me how to be human." Celeste felt her heart squeeze. "And Robert started as my driver when I was 16. Became my friend, my confidant, my voice of reason when I'm being an idiot." Damien grinned, which according to him is more often than I'd like to admit. "Speaking of which," Grace said, settling into her chair with her own piece of pie, "when's your first doctor's appointment, dear?" "I want to make sure you're seeing the best." "Haven't scheduled one yet," Celeste admitted. "I was going to call tomorrow." "Dr. Helena Morrison," Damien said immediately. "She's the best OBGY in the city. I already called her office. She can see you Thursday if you'd like." "You did what?" Celeste's fork clattered to her plate. "I made an appointment," Damien said, looking confused by her reaction. "Was that wrong? It's my body, Damien, my baby. I make the appointments." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Grace quietly excused herself, and Celeste could feel Damien's surprise and hurt across the table. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I was trying to help. I thought you could take over my life because you're paying for it." "No." His voice was firm, but not angry. "I thought I could take care of you because that's what partners do. But you're right, I should have asked first." The sincerity in his voice deflated her anger. "I'm sorry for snapping. I'm used to making my own decisions, and you should continue to do that. I'll call Dr. Morrison tomorrow and cancel." "No, don't," Celeste sighed. "I'm sure she's wonderful. I just need to feel like I have some control over my own life." Damien leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "You have complete control, Celeste. This arrangement doesn't change that. I'm here to support you, not control you." After dinner, they walked through the gardens in comfortable silence. The evening air was cool against Celeste's skin, and she pulled Damien's jacket closer around her shoulders. He'd insisted she wear it when she shivered. "Tell me about Rebecca," she said suddenly. Damien's steps faltered. "What do you want to know? What made you fall in love with her?" He was quiet for so long that Celeste thought he wouldn't answer. Then she laughed. "At everything. Bad jokes, her own clumsiness, my terrible attempts at cooking. She found joy in the smallest things. A perfect cup of coffee, a good book, the way sunlight looked on water. She sounds wonderful. She also drove me crazy. She was always late. She sang off key in the shower, and she cried during every movie, even the comedies." His voice grew soft. "I loved her completely, flaws and all. Do you think she would have liked me?" Damien stopped walking and turned to face her. "I think she would have adored you. She always said the strongest people are the ones who stay kind, even after life breaks their heart." Celeste felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm scared, Damien." "What? Of not being enough? Failing this baby, the way Marcus failed me? Of being alone again?" She looked down at her hands. "Of falling in love with someone who's still in love with someone else." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Damien stepped closer, his hand gently lifting her chin until she met his eyes. "You're not alone," he said softly, "and you're already 10 times the parent Marcus ever could have been just by wanting this baby." "And the other thing?" His thumb traced along her cheek, and she realized she was crying. "I can't promise I'll ever love again the way I loved Rebecca. But I can promise I'll try to be the partner you deserve. What if trying isn't enough? Then we'll figure it out together." He leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. That's what partners do. Later that night, Celeste lay in her enormous bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of her new home. Somewhere down the hall, she could hear Damien moving around in his room, probably working. Late as Grace had warned her, he always did. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby's gentle movements. "What do you think, little one?" she whispered. "Are we going to be okay here?" As if in answer, the baby gave a particularly strong kick, and Celeste smiled. Be more than okay. Maybe they would be happy. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called, expecting Grace. Instead, Damien appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain. I wanted to check on you. Make sure you had everything you needed. I'm fine, she said, sitting up against the pillows, just thinking. Thoughts, I hope? Getting there? She studied his face in the dim light from the hallway. Damien, thank you for all of this, for giving us a chance. Thank you for saying yes, he replied, for trusting me with something so precious. After he left, Celeste found herself smiling as she drifted off to sleep. For the first time in months, she felt safe, protected. Like maybe, just maybe, she and her bee. 3 weeks into their marriage, Celeste was beginning to believe that maybe fairy tales could be real, even if they started with broken hearts and business arrangements. She'd fallen into a comfortable routine at the mansion mornings in the garden with Grace, afternoons setting up her new photography studio in the converted carriage house. Evenings sharing dinner and conversation with Damien. Studio was everything she'd dreamed of, and more. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with natural light. Professional equipment lined the walls, and a cozy seating area allowed clients to feel comfortable during consultations. Damien had insisted on the best of everything, and for the first time since the cathedral, Celeste felt like herself again. The Morrison account wants to book you for their daughter's spring wedding, Grace announced, bustling into the studio with a cup of herbal tea and a plate of her famous oatmeal. Cookies. Word is spreading about your work, dear. Can't believe people are actually hiring me, Celeste said, adjusting a backdrop. After everything that happened at my own wedding, I was sure my reputation was ruined. Nonsense. If anything, people respect you more for how you handled it. Grace's eyes twinkled. Besides, Damien may have mentioned your talent to a few influential friends. Before Celeste could respond, the studio door burst open. A tall, lean man with sandy hair and cold blue eyes strode in, his expensive suit unable to hide the predatory gleam in his gaze. So this is where the little gold digger is hiding, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Grace immediately stepped protectively in front of Celeste. Jonathan Cross, you have no business here. Actually, I have every business here, Grace. This is family property, after all. Jonathan's smile was sharp as a blade. And I'm still family, despite my dear cousins. Questionable choices. What do you want? Celeste asked, stepping around Grace despite the older woman's protests. To see the woman who's managed to bewitch my cousin so completely. Jonathan circled her like a shark scenting blood. Quite. The story, isn't it? Abandoned bride finds billionaire savior. Very romantic. Get out, Celeste said firmly, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. Oh, I don't think so. You see, I know exactly what this little arrangement is about. Damien needs a wife to claim his inheritance, and you need money to support your bastard child. But did he tell you what happens when the novelty wears off? Jonathan, that's enough. Damien's voice cut through the tension like a whip. Stood in the doorway, his face dark with fury. Get away from my wife's wife. Jonathan laughed. Is that what we're calling it? I prefer business transaction. Damien crossed the room in 3 long strides, placing himself between Jonathan and Celeste. I said, get out. I'm just looking out for family interests, cousin. The board is starting to ask questions about your sudden marriage. They're wondering if maybe grandfather's conditions were a bit too... restrictive. The will is ironclad. Jonathan, you'll never get your hands on Cross Industries. We'll see about that. Jonathan's gaze shifted to Celeste. Enjoy it while it lasts, sweetheart. Men like Damien always go back to their own kind eventually. After Jonathan left, Celeste sank into a chair, her hand shaking. Is he right? Are people really questioning our marriage? Jonathan's a snake, Damien said, kneeling beside her chair. He's been trying to undermine me since the day my grandfather died. Don't let him get to you. But what if he's right about the rest of it? What if this is just a business transaction to you? Damien's hands covered hers. Look at me, Celeste. This stopped being just business the moment you walked into my life. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Meet me at the Riverside Cafe. We need to talk. N. Who's N? Damien asked, reading over her shoulder. Celeste's blood ran cold. Natalie Pierce. Your ex-girlfriend. The cafe was crowded, the lunch rush providing cover for what Celeste suspected would be an uncomfortable conversation. She spotted Natalie, immediately tall, blonde, and devastatingly beautiful in the way that only came from good genes and expensive maintenance. Celeste, isn't it? Natalie's voice was silk over steel. Thank you for coming. What do you want? Celeste asked, sliding into the booth across from her. To understand what you think you're doing. Natalie's perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around her coffee cup. Damien and I have history. Real history. We were together for 3 years. Before Rebecca came along. That's between you and Damien. Is it because I was with him when Rebecca died? I held him while he cried. I stayed with him through the worst of his grief. And the night before you two got married, he called me. Celeste's heart stopped. What? He was drunk, rambling about Rebecca, about how he'd never love anyone else. Said your marriage was just a business arrangement, that he was doing you a favor. You're lying, am I? Natalie pulled out her phone, showing Celeste a recent text thread. He's been texting me for weeks, Celeste, telling me he misses me, that he made a mistake. The messages were right there in black and white. Damien's name, expressions of regret and longing, promises to make things right between them. Celeste felt the world tilt around her. He loves me, Natalie continued, her voice almost gentle. He always has. Rebecca was just an infatuation, and you're just a convenience. But I'm the one he comes back to. Celeste stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I have to go. Celeste, wait. Natalie's hand shot out to stop her. I'm not telling you this to be cruel. I'm telling you because you deserve to know the truth. You seem like a nice person, and I don't want to see you get hurt. Too late for that, Celeste whispered, rushing from the cafe. She was halfway home when the cramping started. Sharp stabbing pains that took her breath away. She pulled over, fumbling for her phone with shaking hands. Grace. She gasped when the housekeeper answered. Something's wrong. The baby. I'm calling an ambulance, Grace said immediately. Stay right where you are, dear. Help is coming. The hospital was a blur of activity. Doctors, nurses, machines beeping urgently. Celeste lay on the examination table, tears streaming down her face, as Dr. Morrison pressed the ultrasound wand to her belly. There, Dr. Morrison said, her voice warm with relief. Strong heartbeat, good movement. Your baby is fine, Celeste. But the pain stress can cause cramping, especially in the second trimester. Have you been under unusual stress lately? Celeste closed her eyes, Natalie's words echoing in her mind. You could say that. The baby's okay. Damien's voice came from the doorway, raw with worry. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, as if he'd run all the way from wherever he'd been. The baby's fine, Dr. Morrison assured him. But your wife needs rest and minimal stress. Whatever's been bothering her, it needs to stop. After the doctor left, Damien approached the bed cautiously. Celeste, I'm so sorry. Grace told me about Jonathan, about the cafe. I never should have let him, is it true? She asked quietly. Natalie. Damien's face went pale. What about Natalie? She showed me texts, Damien. Messages from you saying you missed her, that you made a mistake. Celeste's voice broke. She said you called her drunk the night before our wedding. I can explain. So it's true. Damien ran his hands through his hair. Yes, I called her. But not for the reasons you think. Then why? Because I was terrified. He moved closer to the bed. I was about to marry a woman I barely knew, and I was scared I was making a huge mistake. Not because of you, but because of me. Because I was afraid I'd hurt you. Texts. I was drunk, and I was confused. I thought maybe if I went back to something familiar, something safe, I could stop feeling so much for you. His voice dropped to a whisper. But I don't want safe anymore, Celeste. I want you. You want me, or you want the convenience I provide? I want you. He knelt beside the bed, taking her hand in both of his. I want your laugh when Grace tells terrible jokes. I want your passion when you talk about photography. I want your strength when you stand up to me. I want to be there when our baby takes her first steps. Our baby? She's mine in every way that matters. I love her already, Celeste.
Yes.
Love you. The words hung between them, precious and fragile. Celeste searched his face, looking for any sign of deception, but found only raw honesty. I love you too, she whispered, but I'm scared. What if Jonathan finds a way to take everything? What if then we'll face it together, Damien said, lifting her hand to his lips. No more business arrangements, no more walls between us. Just us, and whatever comes next. As he leaned down to kiss her, gentle and sure, Celeste felt the last of her defenses crumble. This wasn't the fairy tale she'd planned, but it was real. It was theirs. And for the first time since that terrible morning at the cathedral, she believed in happy endings again. Outside the hospital room, Jonathan Cross stood in the shadows, his phone pressed to his ear. It's done, he said quietly. The stress test worked perfectly. She's vulnerable now, emotional. It's time to move to phase 2. And if Damien doesn't cave, the voice on the other end asked. Jonathan's smile was cold. Then we'll have to get creative. One way or another, Cross Industries will be mine. Part 5. The Truth 2 months later. Celeste stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom, marveling at how much her life had changed. Her belly had grown round and prominent, and she could feel the baby's strong kicks throughout the day. More importantly, the walls between her and Damien had completely dissolved. What had started as a marriage of convenience had blossomed into something deeper and more beautiful than either of them had dared to hope. You're glowing, Damien said from the doorway, his eyes soft with love as he watched her smooth her hands over her dress. I'm enormous, she laughed, but his expression made her feel beautiful anyway. You're perfect. He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands covering hers on her belly. How's our little fighter today? Active. I think she's practicing soccer in there. Good. She'll need to be strong for what's coming. Celeste turned in his arms, studying his face. You're worried about the board meeting tomorrow? Jonathan's been pushing hard for a vote of no confidence. He's convinced 3 board members that our marriage is a sham, that I'm not fit to run the company. But we can prove it's real now. We love each other. Love isn't something you can present as evidence, sweetheart. Damien's jaw tightened. He's demanding a full investigation into our relationship, our finances, everything. He wants to paint you as a gold digger and me as a fool. Then we'll show them who we really are. The next morning, the Cross Industries boardroom was packed with tension. The 12 board members sat around the massive mahogany table, their faces carefully neutral, as Jonathan presented his case. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan began. Pacing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, we're here to discuss the future of this company. My cousin Damien has been operating under a cloud of questionable judgment, making decisions based on personal desperation rather than business acumen. That's enough, Jonathan, Damien said from his seat at the head of the table. State your case or sit down. I move for a vote of no confidence in Damien Cross's leadership. Based on his violation of the spirit of our grandfather's will through a marriage of convenience designed solely to secure his inheritance, board member Victoria Hartwell, a stern woman in her 60s, leaned forward. Do you have evidence of this alleged arrangement? Jonathan smiled coldly. I have financial records showing large payments to Mrs. Cross immediately following their marriage. I have witnessed testimony about the suspicious timing of their relationship. And I have this. He activated a screen showing a series of photographs at last. At the cafe with Natalie, looking distressed. Damien at a bar, apparently drunk.
What?
The 2 of them shaking hands at that first meeting after her ruined wedding. These photos tell a clear story of a business transaction, not a marriage based on love. Damien stood, his face dark with fury. Those photos are taken out of context, and you know it. Are they? Right. Then explain to the board how you met your wife, Damien. Tell them about the romantic courtship that led to your marriage. Before Damien could respond, the boardroom doors opened. Celeste walked in, her chin high, despite her obvious nervousness. She wore a simple navy dress that accentuated her pregnancy, and her dark hair was pulled back in an elegant bun. "I'd like to address the board if I may," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Mrs. Cross, this is highly irregular," Victoria began. "Please," Celeste interrupted. "You're discussing my marriage, my life, my family. I think I have a right to speak." She moved to the front of the room, her hands resting on her belly. "You want to know the truth about how Damien and I met? Here it is. I was abandoned at the altar by my fiancé when he learned I was pregnant. I was sitting in that church, humiliated and heartbroken, when this man," she gestured to Damien, "caught me when I stumbled. He didn't know me anything, but he stayed." The room was silent, hanging on her every word. "He proposed a business arrangement. Yes, I accepted it because I needed security for my baby. But what Jonathan's photographs don't show is what happened next." She looked directly at Damien, love shining in her eyes. "He gave me more than financial security. He gave me respect, partnership, and eventually love. Real love." "Pretty words," Jonathan interjected, "but words don't change facts. This marriage is a fraud, is it?" Celeste reached into her purse and pulled out a small recording device. "Because I have something that might interest you all. A recording of a conversation I had with Jonathan 3 weeks ago." She pressed play, and Jonathan's voice filled the room. "The stress test worked perfectly. She's vulnerable now, emotional. It's time to move to phase 2. The board members exchanged shocked glances as the recording continued, revealing Jonathan's scheme to manipulate both Celeste and Damien. "You orchestrated Natalie's return," Damien said, his voice deadly quiet. "You fabricated those text messages. I did what was necessary to protect this company from your poor judgment." Jonathan shot back, but his confident facade was cracking. "You put my wife and unborn child at risk," Damien continued, rising from his chair. "You caused her to have a medical emergency that could have cost us everything." "Damien, that's enough," Victoria said firmly. "Mr. Jonathan Cross, these are serious allegations. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Jonathan's face was pale, his carefully constructed case crumbling around him. I was acting in the best interests of the company. By committing fraud and endangering the life of a pregnant woman." Victoria's voice was ice. "I think we've heard enough. All in favor of dismissing Mr. Jonathan Cross from the board and pursuing legal action?" The vote was unanimous. As security escorted Jonathan from the building, Victoria approached Celeste and Damien. "I owe you both an apology. It's clear that your marriage, regardless of how it began, has become something real and valuable. The board stands behind you, Damien." 3 weeks later, Celeste woke to sharp pains radiating through her back. Glanced at the clock for 30 a.m. Beside her, Damien slept peacefully, his arm draped protectively over her. "Damien," she whispered, shaking his shoulder gently. "I think it's time." He was instantly awake, his eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and terror. "Time? Like time? Unless you know another reason why I'd be having contractions every 5 minutes." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Grace fussed over last-minute preparations while Robert drove them to the hospital with the skill of a race car driver. Dr. Morrison met them at the entrance. Calm and reassuring despite the early hour. "How are we feeling, Mama?" she asked, as they settled Celeste into the delivery room. "Like I'm about to meet my daughter?" Celeste gasped between contractions. "Our daughter," Damien corrected, squeezing her hand. "We're about to meet our daughter." Labor was long and difficult, but Damien never left her side. He held her hand through every contraction, whispered encouragement in her ear, and cried with her when the pain became overwhelming. "I can see the head," Dr. Morrison announced. "One more push, Celeste. You're almost there." With a final, tremendous effort, Celeste brought their daughter into the world. The baby's cry filled the room, strong and indignant, and Celeste collapsed. Back against the pillows with tears streaming down her face. "She's perfect," Dr. Morrison said, placing the baby on Celeste's chest. 7 pounds, 2 ounces of absolute perfection. Damien stared at the tiny girl in wonder, his own eyes bright with tears. "She's beautiful, just like her mother." "Ah!" "Her name?" the nurse asked, preparing the birth certificate. Celeste looked up at Damien, then down at their daughter. Sophia Grace Cross, she said. Sophia for wisdom, Grace for the woman who helped raise the man I love. Sophia Grace Cross, Damien repeated, his voice thick with emotion. Welcome to the world, little one. 6 months later, Celeste stood in the same cathedral where her first wedding had fallen apart, but this time, everything was different. She wore a simple ivory dress that accommodated her post-pregnancy figure. Her hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders. In her arms, baby Sophia slept peacefully, oblivious to the significance of the day. Are you ready? Testing Celeste's veil. I've been ready for months, Celeste replied, her eyes shining with happiness. This time, when the music began, Damien was waiting at the altar. He looked impossibly handsome in his black tuxedo, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked down the aisle. There was no doubt, no fear, no business arrangement, just love, pure and simple. Dearly beloved, Father Rodriguez began, we are gathered here today to witness the renewal of vows between Damien and Celeste Cross, and to celebrate the love that has grown between them. When it came time for their vows, Damien went first. Celeste, when I met you, I was a man who had given up on love. You taught me that the heart can heal, that love can grow in the most unexpected places. You gave me a daughter, a family, a reason to believe in tomorrow. I promise to love you, to cherish you, and to be the father Sophia deserves for all the days of my life. Celeste's voice was steady despite her tears. Damien, you caught me when I was falling, in every sense of the word. You gave me strength when I had none, hope when I had lost it all. You loved me when I couldn't love myself, and you chose our daughter before she was even born. I promise to love you, to stand by you, and to build a beautiful life together. They exchanged rings, new ones, chosen together this time. Father Rodriguez smiled,